I'm often asked what's normal in terms of sleep duration. How much sleep is normal and how much sleep we need? The short answer is that we all have an individual sleep requirement, and the body will always give us, at the very least, the minimum amount of sleep we need. For the longer answer, keep watching and I'll talk about this some more in today's video. Hi, I'm Martin Reed. If you have insomnia, I offer sleep coaching programs that will give you all the skills and support you need to enjoy better sleep for the rest of your life. You can learn more at insomniacoach.com. Now, you've probably heard that we should all be aiming for something like 8 hours of sleep. And if you have chronic insomnia, that can be quite concerning, since it can make you think there's something seriously wrong and that your health might be at risk if you regularly get less than 8 hours of sleep. The fact of the matter is that we each have an individual sleep requirement, just as we each have an individual shoe size. And this requirement can actually change from day to day, just as the number of breaths we take can change from day to day. So the best way to think about sleep duration is that it's something the body takes care of all by itself. The body will always give us the minimum amount of sleep we need. Now, that's not to say that we should be satisfied with getting, say, 5 hours of sleep each night if that leads us to feel drained, exhausted, and lethargic. However, if we can learn to trust our body's natural ability to sleep and remove any effort to sleep, we create the right conditions for more sleep to happen. In other words, if we try to control sleep, or if we have a lot of sleep-related worry, it can be very difficult to get more than the bare minimum of sleep and to start enjoying the luxury of additional bonus sleep. Now, did you notice that I mentioned it's okay not to feel satisfied with 5 hours of sleep each night if 5 hours of sleep leaves you feeling drained, exhausted, and lethargic? Well, that's because for some people, 5 hours of sleep is enough. Some people can feel great after 5 hours of sleep, and that's all the sleep they need. For someone like this, trying to get more than 5 hours of sleep would be a completely fruitless endeavor. Their body just will not consistently generate more than 5 hours of sleep because they do not need more than 5 hours of sleep, and their body would not benefit from more than 5 hours of sleep. Many people live happy, productive, and energetic lives with 5 hours of sleep each night. Others with 6, others with 7, others with 8. A real difficulty I have when people ask me how much sleep they should be getting is that it's impossible to know for sure. The most accurate answer to this question is that the amount of sleep you need is the amount of sleep you get when you wake feeling refreshed and energetic enough to enjoy a productive day. This is, of course, very subjective, and that's because sleep itself is very subjective. If you feel you're sleeping well, then you're almost certainly sleeping well, regardless of how many hours of sleep you're getting. Now, let's share some numbers, probably the real reason why you're still watching this video. But first, it's important to make a few points here. The first being that sleep duration recommendations are typically aimed at people who are intentionally depriving themselves of sleep. So when you see messages that tell you to aim for 7 or 8 hours of sleep, these are aimed at people who are not giving themselves the opportunity to get 7 or 8 hours of sleep. They might be working late into the night, getting out of bed really early, and intentionally depriving themselves of sleep. For these people, messages that encourage more sleep can be helpful. But unfortunately, many people reading these messages are people who are giving themselves a lot of opportunity for sleep and are placing a lot of importance on sleep. This usually leads to sleep effort and worry, and this immediately makes sleep more difficult. Secondly, it's important to bear in mind that people who sleep well pay very little, if any, attention to how much sleep they get. So when asked, they'll typically think of when they go to bed at night, when they start their day, and report the difference between the two times as the amount of sleep they get. This, of course, means that people without any concern about sleep typically report getting more sleep than they're actually getting, since people don't fall asleep as soon as their head hits the pillow and remain completely asleep throughout the entire night until the second they get out of bed. One study found that people who reported getting an average of roughly 7 hours of sleep were actually getting an average of 6 hours of sleep. So when your friends or family members tell you how much sleep they get, consider that not only is their sleep requirement likely to be different to yours, but that they might also be overestimating the amount of sleep they actually get by as much as an hour. It's also important to note that all sleep duration numbers are based on averages, and there will always be healthy, happy people who exist outside of these averages. Although the World Health Organization puts the average height of a woman at 163 centimeters and the average height of a man at 176.5 centimeters, this does not mean that women taller or shorter than 163 centimeters or men taller or shorter than 176.5 centimeters have anything to worry about. Additionally, just as a woman who isn't 163 centimeters or a man who isn't 176.5 centimeters won't find it very helpful to try to make themselves shorter or taller, someone who sleeps for more or less than any published average sleep duration probably isn't going to find it very helpful to try to make themselves get more or less sleep to match that average. Finally, it's important to understand that our sleep changes as we get older. We do not need or get the same sleep at the age of 70 that we got at the age of 20. As we get older, we typically get less sleep and we typically get lighter sleep. Now, that's not to say we need to be satisfied with poor sleep as we get older, just that our sleep changes as we get older. So it can be helpful to avoid the temptation to evaluate your sleep or to hold it to the same standard as the sleep you got 10, 20, 30, or 40 years ago. So with all that in mind, when sleep is measured objectively, for example in a sleep lab, we often see sleep durations far closer to 6 hours than 8 hours. Although the National Sleep Foundation recommends that young adults and adults get between 7 and 9 hours of sleep, and older adults get between 7 and 8 hours of sleep, they emphasize that those recommendations are not guidelines for those with a sleep disorder, such as insomnia. And they also point out that for adults between 26 and 64 years of age, 6 hours of sleep may be appropriate. And for adults 65 and over, as little as 5 hours may be appropriate. Ultimately, sleep duration is something we don't have any control over. Although we can deliberately deprive ourselves of sleep, we can't deliberately generate more sleep. The body will always give us, at the very least, the minimum amount of sleep we need. The less pressure we put on ourselves to sleep, and the less effort we put into sleep, the easier sleep becomes. And that's when we give ourselves the opportunity to get more sleep, if the body wants it and needs it. So I hope you found this short video helpful. If you did, please click the like button and subscribe to the channel, and click the notification bell so you don't miss any future videos. I do try and share a new sleep snippet video each week. If you have any questions, comments, feedback, or suggestions for a future video, please leave a comment below, or you can email me directly. My email address is hello@insomniacoach.com. Thanks for watching, and as always, I'd like to leave you with this important reminder. You can sleep.